Welcome back, and today we are flying out the G.91 R4 for the German tech tree. If you are wondering about the Italian one, it is identical, and if you are wondering about the G.91 R1, it is also identical, other than the loadout. The G.91Rs are a little bit of a weird plane. They accelerate very well till about 750 kilometers an hour, they have a very good roll rate, and they turn quite nicely. However, the retention is pretty bad, the acceleration above 800 is pretty mediocre, and the guns just leave a bit to be desired. The G.91 is a plane that you don't actually want to keep fast throughout the entirety of the match, and even though they are pretty comparable to something like an F-Saber, they are actually basically the polar opposite. The F-Saber is all about staying fast, and this thing is about staying slow. However, if you go too slow, you are going to be picked off pretty quickly. Not because you're not nimble enough, because you can be scrambling around and just staying outside of people's guns for a very long time. But once you start going too slow, you just can't really maneuver anymore. And yes, the acceleration below 750 is good. However, the retention still isn't great, and if you are on the defensive, even though you might have decent acceleration, it doesn't counter the fact that you also lose a lot of speed very easily. So if you are on the defensive, you're gonna have a pretty hard time crawling it back. However, if you do have the advantage on someone, you can use it quite nicely, because you can just kind of dive on someone, and this thing handles in that sense very similarly to something like the F86A5, on which I made a video 2 days ago. They both just kind of fill the same role. Mostly in the sense that they are both pretty good at dogfighting, but they're also both on the clock. You can't sustain long fights, and you don't want to stay in massive furballs, because sooner rather than later you are going to be running out of speed and you are going to be paying the price. 1v1s, pretty decent. You can turn into about anything, mainly because you just lose a lot of speed, you still turn nicely, and you have decent acceleration. The issues stem from the moment you have to pull off to maybe switch targets because there's another guy coming in. Now you are losing speed, you are losing position. Once you've lost a position in this thing, it's basically over unless you are fighting something like an F84, something like an A4E, maybe even Saab 105s. All in all, this plane is great at shooting all the beta cuck soy boys, but you are gonna struggle against the true Sigma males that you will run into at this BR very often. And it doesn't really matter what it is. If it's a plane that has good retention and pretty good speed, say it's an F-Saber, say it's an Hunter, FGA, essentially everything that's a decent margin quicker than you, they don't have to dogfight you. And your ability to stay on their 6 actually hinders you more than it helps you, because at the end of the day, all it really does is bleed your speed and make sure that you won't be able to catch them. At these high speeds, you're also not that maneuverable, you will lock up, and if you run the boosters, yeah, it's kind of prone to ripping its wings off. You see this in my videos quite often, where I just kind of roll left, right with a G91 on my 6, and they will just take their wings off. They will just detach them without any issue, because the plane is just too snappy for its own good. But enough rambling, let's take a look at what we are doing in the game today. Now, this plane is not fantastic when it comes to carrying games. It's also not fantastic at being super consistent, because all you have is 450 cals and 4 AIM-9Bs. However, when people try to style you out, just like with the Seahawk video, the AIM-9B has no issue slamming people out of the air. Now, the F84 is dead. I wanted him gone because he has a pretty good altitude advantage on us, and I don't really want to deal with it. Same way with the C-Vixen. I do not want to go slow in front of a red top, so I'm gonna try to chase him down for now. He is faster than us, he will outrun me, so I might not pressure him as much. I'm kind of hoping that he turns around for the guy on our left, and he actually does so. So I'm gonna give chase for now and make sure that this guy actually dies right here, because that's a plane that I just don't want to deal with. Let's see if we can AIM-9B him out of the air. We just send him a pipe bomb. We turn around for the engagement behind us, because right now I feel like I can be more useful fighting these guys other than chasing the C-Vixen that's going to outrun me anyway. And I just need to be careful of the rest of the team that's coming in right now. I thought it was only the Mystere 4A, not really worried about it, but then I also noticed that the F86A5 is coming in, as well as some other guys in the background, but they're not really engaging us as of right now. So I'm just gonna see if I can pull the main brunt away from each other and see if I can maybe either 1v1 or maybe turn it into a 2v1, because the Mystere 4A is not really that much of an issue. With the F86A5, the main thing I want to do is make sure that I get position. I need to make sure that I get on his 6. If I get on his 6, it doesn't really matter that I lose more speed than him, because at the end of the day, if you have position, If I'm a little bit slower, he needs to work even harder to reverse me. And at very low speeds, I will actually out-accelerate this guy, so I should have a pretty easy time. Missed the first shot, pretty easy, bit rough, because now the missed tier 4A is coming in. We're just gonna dive out, see if we can reset the fight with the F86. And luckily, because the F86 was in front of me, I can dive away and I have a pretty decent amount of room to actually get away from him. Now I have both of them on my 6. Not really too worried just yet. The F86 will start catching me very soon here. Mainly because we start going above the high speed area where I don't want to be. Mystere breaks off. And we are gonna do the exact same thing to the F86A5 again. Mystere is still flying into the opposite direction. I'm gonna pull into the A5 and we're just gonna roll over his nose, go back down, make sure that he misses the shot, and then we just lose a bit more speed on him. And again, we instantly get back on the 6. He is going to be faster than us. This time we instantly crit him. And we have some room on the guy that's behind us. So I'm just going to recommit here and make sure that this guy dies right here, or is at least crippled to the point where I don't have to worry about him anymore. Then the Mystere dies, so I don't have to worry about anyone really anymore, because we are alone on the deck. He is crippled. He is slightly slower than me, but I have the room. He is not going to be doing anything. He's at least warm for the winter. And he is going to be taking a nap in the dirt right there. Then we fly towards the middle of the map. Just kind of cleaning up the match. Vampire in front of us. Just make sure that we hit him. Yay, 450 cals. Of course it doesn't do that much damage. That's just the annoyance of this plane. It's kind of unwieldy to aim. And then on top of it, you don't have the stopping power to one-shot people. Of course, when bombers fly in front of you with like 500 kilometers an hour, you should have a pretty easy time just spraying them down. But against fast targets that are actively dodging and you aren't able to line your guns up properly, that's the main issue of this plane. You really just have to hope that people kind of ignore you, that you can lash onto people's 6s, and you just fly this thing a bit like a leech. I didn't have a great time flying this thing, and I used to love the R1. I have like 850 kills in the original Italian R1. It was a great little plane. You could run this thing with min fuel because you had like 10 minutes of it. The other fighters couldn't really, so you kind of had a performance advantage in a way. They were still better at high speed, but you could like dogfight them, you could pester everyone. I ran it with the rocket pods, the Mighty Mouse ones, so I could actually attack ground units in the meantime. And I ran it with people in a squad, and they would like run something like the F2 or a MiG-15, and then I could kind of protect the ground units, make sure that we win on tickets. And the performance wasn't too bad with the rocket pods on, because you also had the, of course, lack of fuel in your plane. Nowadays, with everyone running min fuel, the G91Rs are just not that fantastic anymore, and they are very opportunistic fighters if you get up tiered or your own tier. If you get down tiered, this thing is still an absolute menace, but I don't think that in RRB these planes are that fantastic. It's a much better platform than something like an A4E if you are looking for a ground unit vehicle, because you can still run the 4 Nords, and of course they're not as strong as bullpups, nor are they as good as they once were, but I do think that for ground RB this thing is a pretty decent pickup. The AA20 Nords are still kind of bugged and they will explode at a too high of a range very often. I believe it's because it has like a proximity range for double the explosive mass, so it ends up exploding way before it actually does critical damage to people. So very often you'll find just getting hits with it. It's actually super frustrating because I really like using AA Nords. I really find it fun to guide those things in and make sure that people just kind of get slapped out of the air from angles that they don't expect. I find it absolutely hilarious, but the amount of hits and crits that you get with them that don't result in kills and just end up in you getting absolute dick all wasn't worth it to me, so I just flew it with the AIM-9Bs. I don't really care about them, especially the first two I just kind of hand out like free candy. And then the last two I kind of carry around just to annoy planes like F-104s, Yak-38, especially planes that just try to run away from you and don't turn that well. If you get close enough or if you get them slow enough, these missiles will very easily kill them. And they don't really expect you to have them at later stages of the game. Because like 90% of the people that fly planes like this are either ground RB pilots that aren't very familiar with air RB, or they are people that just bought their way straight into jet tiers and they just have no clue what they are doing. And those kind of players mostly just shoot all the missiles off at the start of the game. If you have missiles left like after the 5 to 6 minute mark of the match, people just don't really think you have them anymore, and it's pretty hilarious to use. But this plane really relies on the enemy just kind of not being worried about you. The plane is decent, it's definitely not terrible, but I don't think this is one of the best pickups that you can do if you just want to play it out in air lobby, mainly because you don't have a real reliable way to kill people if they actually show some signs of brain activity. If you want a decent ground pounder that can actually defend itself, yeah, I think it's pretty good. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you all for watching, and you will see me all again in the next one with probably the F104A.